Peace, everybody. As many of you know, Bat ran into some legal trouble and now owes money to the courts. And like most of the people within our community, he isn't rich and has no way of paying off thousands of dollars in a timely manner. He's a dear friend of ours, and we're looking to help him out. So 100% of our August Patreon proceeds will be donated to Bat to help him pay off his legal fees. Village Idiots, a photo zine that documents the graffiti of Bat and Ola in New York City during the summer of 2021, will be shipped to everybody who donates via our Patreon. The link to that is in our bio, and we're going to be posting the proof of donation at the end of August. So we really value everybody who's been showing love and helping us turn this into a vehicle for helping out people within our community. So immense thank you, and enjoy the episode. We are live.
All right.
Thank you again, dude. The second time, I'm super hyped. So today we're going to be talking a lot about your book, The World Screaming Nov, Rikers Island, your experiences there, and like just the things that you think about this. I guess I wanted to start off saying, what exactly is your experience with Rikers, and what prompted the writing of this book?
All right. Yeah, I became a teacher right out of college, and I was working at a high school, and I just didn't like it because the kids were too smart. I was like, I can't do anything for these kids. I was a bad kid, so I liked bad kids, and I went to work in juvenile detention. They used to call it Spofford back in the day, but then they opened up a couple of new juvenile detentions, one in Brownsville and one in the South Bronx, called Crossroads and Horizon. So I worked in those places for many years, and I would visit Rikers Island, and I did some type of work there also for a while, but I hated Rikers Island. It was disgusting. In fact, Rikers Island is such a scary place. But actually, the story goes back to my time as a teenager. A lot of my friends were getting arrested. In the 90s, they had a big thing for quality of life, and graffiti was a problem. Everything was a problem. And so all my friends who were black or Ecuadorian, my boy was Ecuadorian, he passed away, they would all go to jail for long periods of time, go to Rikers Island. And me, I was white, and I would always get away with shit, you understand? And so it goes back to that. It goes back to my experiences. I always wanted to go to Rikers, not to live there or anything, but to see what was happening, because I felt like I got away with a lot of crimes that my friends did not get away with, you know what I mean? And again, because of skin color of my skin. Mm-hmm. So it all starts there, I guess, with the understanding of racism and the understanding that they were locking black people up at crazy numbers. So back then we didn't have vocabulary, like systemic racism. That was not white supremacy. None of these words were words that we used. I probably wouldn't even say white supremacy. You would think Ku Klux Klan. Systemic racism, you'd be like, I don't know about that. But we understood it, but we just didn't have those words. And so I guess it goes back to that. This book goes back to that, to those things. So yeah, I worked in Rikers Island, worked in these places, and I saw only black and brown bodies being caged, and people losing their minds, just really losing their shit.
Yeah, I mean, those places from Spofford to Rikers to a lot of these institutions that the word is correctional institution. So in theory, it's supposed to correct, right? But a lot of the times what actually happens is those places become one of the places that scar them for life and make it almost impossible to fully recuperate to your past self, to your happy past self that feels free. From like in the Tao of the Wu, RZA talks about his experiences at Spofford. Mike Tyson talks about his experience at Spofford. So many people. John Joseph from the Cro-Mags talks about his experiences at Spofford. And it's like a literal hell on earth that once you go there, it's going to be hard to be that same unjaded person when you come out, because you see what real straight up like suffering, real survival is. You know what I mean? So these places, it's almost like, what is the point of them? You know what I mean? Because what we're looking for as a society, in theory, would be nice to think what we're looking for is true solutions to like the problems of humanity. But if these are our solutions, and it's been shown that not only do they not work how we want them to work, but a lot of these people, like in Rikers in specific, a lot of them just, it's like 85% of the detainees are pretrial defendants. A lot of the people are there for just like a year or two, so they come out back into society. And if, regardless of what you think of these people, once they come out, they're back, like I just said, back into society. You better hope that it worked, because if not, we're going to be living in a worse world. And something that you speak on in your book is like the actual freeing of these people and the downfall and the shutting down of Rikers. And when these people are freed in the book, what they do is they start destroying New York City, starting with Queens because that's what's connected to Rikers Island, right? So it's like,
I was
yeah,
mad at Queens back then. I had a
yeah, I
lot
could
of
tell.
beef.
I
I grew
could
up in
tell.
Brooklyn, so we got that Brooklyn Queens beef. But
What like
it's so funny.
what do you think about when you think of like the destruction of Rikers, the shutting down of Rikers, which we were saying like they
Yeah.
were planning on doing in 2017? De Blasio said that if hopefully in 10 years, if the crime goes down, then we'll shut down Rikers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about crime going down. Crime is always going to be there. We live in a capitalist society, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to commit crime. It's just that Rikers itself is a real disgusting place. I mean, it's a whole nother world. You understand? So I'm all about the shutting down of Rikers and opening up different community prisons because we need. I mean, I don't know if we need prisons. Quite frankly, it reminds me of a book by Angela Davis called "Are Prisons Obsolete?" and that came out in like 2003, I believe. And in that book, she argues for basically the dissolution of all prisons because she has great points. Like she makes really awesome points about like where prisons come from, what they do, and why we don't need them anymore. But that's really radical to say because then you say, well, what are we going to do with criminals? Well, how do we stop people from crime? And I think that the two kind of are two different actual questions almost. And like, it's not just like So it's really difficult to talk about shutting down or like defund the NYPD or shutting down things because people are so used to life being that way. But I feel like we can be smarter. We can do something better than prisons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like completely ridding them is like you said. So many people are that have that mindset of being institutionalized that they can't even function in the outside world. I remember watching this documentary on YouTube of this dude named Danny. He's like pretty famous. He did like 40 years in prison, and I remember the day of his release, a guard came to his cell and they were like, "Yo, it's time to go. Like, pack your stuff." He's like, "No, like I'm not going anywhere." And he's like, "What do you mean? Like, haven't you been waiting for this? Like, yo, like pack your stuff. You gotta go. Like, your time is up." He's like, "There's nothing out there for me." He's like, and the guard started crying and like what's it called? He was like, "Yo, you gotta leave or we're calling the riot squad. Like, don't make me do this. Like, yo, your time is up. Please, like, don't put up a fight." He's like, "Get whoever you want to get. I'm not leaving.
Wow.
There's really nothing out there for me." So
Crazy.
like, yo, it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like we've getting to a point like that. You know,
Like you say, institutionalized is such it's a powerful word, and that's kind of what we do in this country. We're so institutionalized in so many ways, you know. But yeah, that is one of the nastiest institutions that we have in our country, quite frankly. And it's not just our country. I guess everywhere there's prisons, but how crazy is it to think in the so-called freedom land that we lock up more people than any country. I mean, Russia, China, they don't lock up as much as we do, supposedly. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't believe that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the question is so like that is true that we lock up more people than and we're the so-called free society, land of the free, right? But is that because we have more crime, or is that because of some other reason? Is that because we made a system that makes it easier to lock up people?
Right.
You
I
know what
definitely
I mean?
think it's a system that we created, and there's a big for-profit thing in prison. You know what I mean? It's not just the guys who work there. I mean, the guards. By the way, guards make a lot of money. Prison guards, they do double, triple overtime, and they make six figures, like good six figures, not just like low six figures. That's why all prison guards have homes in Long Island, boats. I mean, these guys live the mafia lifestyle. But there's also concessions. There's like people sell food to the prisons. People sell, electricity or whatever it is. There's all this money caught up in prison, and it's for profit. So until we get rid of the profit motive, you know what I mean? We're gonna have more and more prisons. They're building more prisons. I think California is the one that Angela Davis speaks a lot about, which is in certain, I don't know, over a 20-year span, they built like 55 prisons and only one university, in that same 20-year span. So it's like, what are we doing? That's why I personally, I think it's disgusting though that they build prisons in Brownsville and South Bronx for children. And it's like, if you build it, they will come. They're setting up the kids in those neighborhoods to go to these places, because if you work there, you'll see it's but basically kids from that neighborhood. The South Bronx, all the kids go through Horizons, in the Brownsville, all the kids go through fucking Crossroads, and that's wrong. That's like absolutely wrong.
No, it is wrong, and when Nixon declared the war on drugs, I know from the years after that, in a short number of years, prison population went from 5 million. From 500,000 to 2 million.
Wow.
In a span that like it doesn't make sense. Like the growth pre that was so low, and I actually wanted to read a little quote from the book The New Jim Crow, because before I read that, it's like people might be like, because you just said the problem is one, for-profit prisons, so you have an incentive to lock people up, and then two, systemic racism, white supremacy. But the argument a lot of people might give is like, what are you talking about? Like systemic racism and white supremacy. A lot of people might say, no one is forcing like blacks and Hispanics to commit crimes per se. No one is so if they're in prison, it is of no fault but their own, because they themselves committed the crime. There is no law that says you will go to jail for this and that. So I actually wanted to read something that explains that a little bit to our listeners who might be like, that's something that would be thought of, right? So it's essentially speaking about like how it works. How is it that the prison system is made to back up this racism and keep people in legitimately the new Jim Crow? And it's basically how the war on drugs is the vehicle, and it's the vehicle through which extraordinary numbers of black men are forced into the cage, and it happens in 3 distinct phases. So the first stage is the roundup. Vast numbers of people are swept into the criminal justice system by the police, who conduct drug operations primarily in poor communities of color. The police are rewarded with cash through drug forfeiture laws and federal grant programs for rounding up as many people as possible, so touching on the whole for-profit. And they do it, and they operate unconstrained by constitutional rules of procedure that were once considered inviolate. Police can stop and search anyone they choose for drug investigations, provided they get quote-unquote consent, because there is no meaningful check on the exercise of police discretion. And of course, racial biases are granted free rein. And essentially, they're guaranteeing that those who are swept up in the system are primarily black and brown, because where are they doing these searches? They're doing them in the black and brown neighborhoods. So of course, they're going to get more people because that's where they're doing the searches. And then this conviction into the prison system marks the beginning of the second phase, which is the period of formal control. Once defendants are arrested, they're generally denied meaningful legal representation and are pressured to plead guilty, whether they are or are not. While under formal control, virtually every aspect of one's life is regulated and monitored by the system, and any type of resistance is subject to swift sanctions. And this period of control can last literally your whole life, even for those convicted of very minor nonviolent offenses. And then the final stage, which some people advocate as the period of invisible punishment, is backed up by the law. So these law operates collectively to ensure that the vast majority of convicted offenders will never integrate into mainstream white society, because they're always going to be discriminated against legally for the rest of their lives. How are you going to get a job? You're going to be looked at like this and that. You won't be able to travel. It's going to be hard to get a passport, blah, blah, blah. So just by doing the initial searches for these drugs in these neighborhoods, it sets off this chain of reaction that you won't see it as that unless you understand it as that, because it's like, well, who told them to do drugs? Who told them to sell drugs? But you think it's only black and browns that are doing drugs or selling drugs? Right. Of course not. You know what I mean? I went to the earlier period of my life. I went to a private school that was primarily white people, and it was just as many people selling and doing drugs at parties or in the schools or whatever as there was in any of the public schools I went to that were mainly minorities. It was the same amount, if not sometimes more. You know what I'm saying? So it's like.
So that's good that you bring that up. And again, I was thinking a lot about the words that we use today and how we didn't have those words before. And so systemic racism, again, we did not have that word, let's say, in the 90s. I'm sure that existed. I mean, the idea, people knew it, but I was not smart enough to know that word. But we always said it's a setup. Everybody was, oh, it's a setup. The system is a setup. It's set up for black people to fail. And so it's like what you just read there. It's really smart, and so I think that's one thing I'd like to put out there. So my book, the book The World Screaming Over, I wrote this back in think 2007 or so, is before even Obama was president. So it was written during the Bush era. I've changed a lot since then. I've grown a lot since then. I've gotten older. I'm wiser. But I was very much on some revolutionary tip with it. I think that's too extreme. And so when people say, like you were saying earlier, oh, but we need to lock people up and nobody asked them to do these things, that's also too extreme. That's too facile of an argument. What you're saying there gives nuance to it all. You know, we get to see it. And so the conversation for abolishing prisons is not just yes or no. It's like, it's so much deeper than just yes or no. You know, this whole conversation is not, well, what are we going to do with prisoners or with criminals? It's like, there's a lot more to it. So that's why, personally, I'm really excited to think that the city would close down Rikers Island, because it's just like, it's a setup. It's a total setup. And you know, you just said something from that quote that you can't get a passport, and I was thinking, man, if I were not allowed to leave this country, I'd be a totally different person, you know, because getting out of this country gives you perspective, you know. If I were not allowed to be able to work a real job, yeah, I mean, like, not a real job, but let's say a normal job, because I have a conviction, of course you have to go do the worst things you can do. So it's all a setup. You're set up to fail. That was something I learned in prison. So again, I didn't go to prison. I worked in prison. I was a teacher, but I learned so much from the students there. I learned so much from the so-called prisoners. I call them students. And the thing that they would say is, you can set people up to win, or you can to succeed, or you can set people up to fail. It's your choice. And that stuck with me my whole life. Like, if you tell people, if you have students or you have anybody in your life and you set them up to fail all the time, they're gonna fail. You know what I mean? If I have kids, if I set them up in some way, like to do something that I know they're gonna fail at, they're gonna fail at. But if you set people up to succeed, you know, they can succeed. So why do we have guys from Long Island working in Brownsville in the 7-5? You know what I mean? Why do we have that? There should be community control, community policing. It should not be racists from different counties, Nassau and Suffolk, come to Brooklyn, where, you know, we live a whole different life than those people, and that they should be in charge of people's, you know, pockets and what's going on. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and it's funny, set up to fail, because like I was saying, in the Riz's book, he speaks on when he was growing up in the Stapleton projects, in the Park Hill projects in Brownsville, and he speaks on the fact that he noticed everything you want is right there, so you'll never leave the area. From the supermarket to the liquor stores to the laundromat to everything you could need is in that few block radius. So you're set up so that you don't have to leave the projects. Why would you go out when everything is right there? All the people you know is right there. You know what else is right there? The jail, and you know what else is right there? The court. And he sees it across the street from him growing up, and he's wondering, why is it across the street from me? And then he finds out later in the years when he goes there himself. You know what I mean? And you speak about in
I'd like to read that book.
I'll give it to you next time. But he speaks about you speak about in your book about the causes of American life, and how a cause gives you an extraordinary way to face death, as well as a reason to wake up in the morning. So both life and death, from waking up to the reason that you would die. And you see that historically throughout warrior societies, throughout religious societies, throughout philosophical societies. They all have their cause, whether it be seeking knowledge, seeking conquest, seeking whatever they're seeking, you know what I mean? Or even graffiti writers. You could have a simple cause such as, I want to go all city, and it will drive you every single night, for night upon night, over something that has primarily intrinsic value. You don't get money, you don't get recognition outside of your little peer group. So it's like, and you talk about American life is void of cause. We have a fake contentedness. It's 9 to 5, so you can buy extra stuff that you necessarily don't need. You have a sexually oversaturated life, to the point where all you do is fuck mad bitches, to the point where you're just losing your mind, and even that itself loses its value. And then you speak about how there's only one cause that is worth living, and that's I'm gonna butcher it, so excuse me, but the coup d'état. Essentially just like the regain of control, the overthrow, the violent uprising. You speak about the violent freedom of Nov, about punching outward and snuffing your oppressor in the face the moment you think he's getting up on you, and understanding that every man bleeds the same blood as you and breathes the same air as you. Yep. And
that's funny. I want to just touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
The thing is, I was young when I wrote that, and and I was really about revolution. It meant a lot to me, the idea of revolution. So we had just gone through 9/11, and in a way 9/11 was like a revolution, even though it was like a really crazy thing, you know, to watch these buildings get smashed and all these people die, but like there's something revolutionary about it. And then the propaganda after that was always about the Muslims, and the Muslims had their cause, and it was always la 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 la, and they're gonna blow themselves up. I swear to God, like during the Bush years, all you heard about was suicide bombing, suicide terrorists, and I knew there was something wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, come on. But that was the propaganda going. And then the Americans were all like gung-ho to go to Afghanistan, of all fucking places in the world, to kill. And it was just about like, and I remember that there were mantras that they would say over and over, like, kill, I don't want to really even fucking repeat these things, but, you know, like really nasty ways of referring to Arab people and just about like killing Arabs, you know what I mean? And also I know like, so like that was part of the culture back then, and so I was riffing on that when I say this like thing called Nov. I mean, just because I guess I was kind of joking. It was tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I was making fun of other people's mantras, making fun of other people's causes, and I was using it because I was young. I was really believed in the revolution. Now that I'm older, I don't believe in violent revolution necessarily, because I think that that's way too Hollywood, you know. Again, a violent revolution, I'd be like probably the first guy to die. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not into that whole shit. But when you're on Rikers Island, I mean, when you see that shit, you I don't know. Even I feel like maybe if people who are locked up there maybe would even think like you just kind of hate the world. You know what I mean? And you'd love to see the whole world just die. And I guess I chose Queens to be destroyed also because I don't know. Queens is also. Like there's like wealthy neighborhoods, I guess, and I always felt like there's like this wealth right next to this horrible, nasty place, and I just felt like, man, there's something just so wrong about Rikers Island and Queens. You know what I mean?
So you don't necessarily. It's funny you saying that you don't transcribe to the pure idea of the violent revolution.
Now that I'm older,
Yeah.
I think that that might have just been a lot more Hollywood in my head and not really thinking about what. So I'm so excited about today, since COVID, since Black Lives Matter. I'm so excited to see like people with ideas talking and like doing things. It's not so like the news was trying to frame Black Lives Matter as like a riot. Oh, why are they rioting? They're burning shit. It's like no, nobody's doing that. So get that the fuck out of our way. And it's like I'm just so proud to see people using their minds rather than fucking breaking everybody's head open and just fighting it out. You know what I mean? Like there are ideas. People are sharing ideas, and that to me is exciting. Now that I'm getting older, I suppose. But I guess when you're 20 and you're full of cum, you just want to fucking you know, again, box, and
box everyone out. That's
box
what you.
everybody
That's what you. Two quotes. So that's what you speak on. For those of you listening who haven't read your book. Essentially, every time there's something insane happening in that book, someone is screaming Nov.
Right.
Every time someone realizes they're getting oppressed, they scream Nov and then do some violent act afterwards. And you speak on when all the prisoners start talking about, what does Nov mean? Where does it come from? Where does it come from? And one of the ones that I thought was funny and really stood out to me was when the only Asian prisoner who was convicted for murder starts speaking on it, and he says the definition and meanings and origins of Nov in the book. He says, Confucius said, men who get angry clutch fist, look man in eye and tell him Nov and punch his fucking face and is free from worldly problems. And I thought that was funny because a lot of the Eastern philosophies speak on what you have to do to be free from the worldly problems. Right. And in the philosophy of the book, it's all you have to do is when you are being oppressed, violently do something about it, right? And then in your other book, Kilroys, Conformity, you come to the realization and you say, the only reasonable conclusion to come to after meditating on it all is that we have to stop avenging past crimes, we have to forgive, we have to let go, we have to move forward. Which I do agree with in if I think about it in like a karmic cycle, the wheel kind of sense, like we do this, they do this, we do this, they do this. What we're doing is avenging their past crimes, take away our subjective viewpoints. What we're doing is avenging what we think was a wrong done to us, and what they're doing is the same way. What we want is our freedom, right? And what the higher-ups want is their freedom. Their freedom involves what? The oppression of the others. Our freedom involves more of like a not pure equality, but more of like an equality sense where we have our voice as well. And to them, they consider that us infringing on their rights. You know what I'm saying? So I do agree with that, but you don't think that there's a point where like violence is necessary, where I can turn the cheek, but I only have two cheeks. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, that's it's a really difficult question because obviously, yeah, you know, you're gonna have to fight sometimes. You know, obviously, violence is there all the time. I think if I were a smarter man, I would want to say, you know, violence is wrong. I think the better me would want to be like peace and like, you know, Jesus like and turn the other cheek type shit. But I'm not always the best me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to say like this is the way. That's what I'm not a pastor or you know I'm not a leader in that sense. I feel like leaders should say things like no, we should not do violence, you know. But again, we are such a violent country. We have such a violent past. We don't talk about it, and we're full of violence. But honestly, the like that whole thing about vendetta, like I think it's stupid that we fight over the past. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we need to fight for the today. Maybe I don't know. Um,
I think violence is a good tool when you can no longer solve problems using the word, then you use like the sword. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You know, like Che Guevara speaks on it and how he uses the sword to accomplish means that he could not do by the word alone.
again, though, look at how his life ended, and I mean, you live by the sword, you're gonna die by the sword.
Yeah.
Che Guevara is great. All these revolutionary guys are great. Fidel. I mean, I really base a lot of the Moki G character on like a Fidel Che
Yeah.
Guevara kind of character, but like you know, like again, tongue in cheek, a lot of joking, but angry joking in there. Um, Look, I respect all of those dudes, and I do believe that you gotta fucking get busy sometimes. But again, like I said, better the better hearts maybe would say let's be peaceful because I think that really is the better way to be. But again, you know, we can't always just live by this or live by
Yeah.
that. So I also want to get back to the mantra idea. It made me think also. I was also riffing on the Bloods and the Crips. So I worked with a lot of Bloods and Crips, and they basically had their own history. They had their own ways of reading. They had their own alphabet. You know what I mean? And they had their own belief systems. You know what I mean? Which I found to be, in one way, amazing. Like, wow, these kids are supposedly ignorant or supposedly, what do you call it? You know, ignorant of history or ignorant of can't read, let's just say. No, they can read and they actually do know history. They know their history. They know the history that they teach themselves, not the bullshit, oh, what happened in World War II history, you know, like that has just been said over and over, the Revolutionary War type of bullshit. So the Bloods and Crips, I just found them fascinating for that too. That they believed in things. They would say things. They had numbers, numerology, and you know things with their hands, letters and shit. And it's like these things meant something to them. And to me, they meant nothing. You know, to do a B or a C meant nothing to me. But to them, it meant something. So again, Nov meant something to me. You know, and so again, we all kind of want to have a belief system, but it's hard to stick to a belief system. But I don't know.
Do you still what do you think about you know, Rikers Island in connection to the capitalist society that we're living in, and capitalism specifically as a whole? Do you see it as an evil system that has brought upon us a lot of more negative than positive, or what do you think about that?
I mean, you know, again, this is it's a good question, but there's a lot more to unpack behind it. So just to say capitalism good, capitalism bad, it's too facile an argument. You know what I mean? It's too easy to just say, oh, it's bad. You know what I mean? Or oh, it's good. There's good and bad. You know what I mean? There's winners and losers for sure in capitalism. There's more losers than winners. But you know, systemic racism is there in the like built into the capitalism, U.S. capitalism. So, you know, that's kind of where the shit hits the fan, because it's like you would think capitalism is supposed to be like almost a meritocracy, like the best will rise to the top, but it's not like that. It's a rigged system. So we don't really I would even say we don't even have capitalism in this country. We have a sort of white socialism. You know what I mean? Because racism it doesn't allow capitalism to even function the way it probably should. I think they say we're living in hyper-capitalist times now, where the rich continually get richer and the poor get more, so like, what is it, like 18 people own all the fucking wealth, whereas the hundreds of million people have nothing. But look, I've gotten to a point in my life where I can't just say, oh, capitalism good, capitalism bad. Like, yeah, I don't, so that's what happens in the media today a lot too. Like, oh, they use words from the 50s too. They're like, oh, you're a socialist. This one's a socialist. This one's a communist. And it's like, no, that doesn't make sense either. It's like people just have ideas, but they want to label them socialist. They want to label them, law and order guy or whatever. And so you see this in politics a lot, and then it becomes part of our conversations. I personally, though, I think that there's a lot more that needs to be unpacked to understand all that. I see you have this book, Conscious Capitalism.
Yeah.
Is there something you want to tell me about capitalism that you think?
100%. Well, I have, like, before I say the ideas in the books, I have like an idea of myself that I don't actually know much. It's a common, like, philosophical idea that almost nothing.
Right.
And even the smartest people, the ones with the most knowledge, know 1% of all the 100% that there is. But I hear a lot about how there's more losers than there are winners in the capitalistic society. I hear also that that kind of stuff. But what about the idea that those people who are the winners, let's say for example, a winner is Jeff Bezos. Another winner is the guy who made the iPhone, right? They're winners in the capitalist society because they are the ones who run the shit. They are the ones cashing in. Is it not by them winning that we, the general masses, also win? Because whether their pursuits are funded by greed and wanting to accumulate. So if the guy who wants to make an iPhone wants to make a ton of bread, right? Cool. He makes his ton of bread, but by making that ton of bread, you have to make a product worth buying because there's so much competition. So then he makes the iPhone, and the iPhone gives people like us access to like a ton of knowledge, gives people like us the ability to like call relatives in other countries. It creates a system that just fuels innovation like no other. And I have like some points from the book itself that speak on it, and it's from the start of capitalism, or like the real implementation of it. A decrease in extreme poverty has happened from 85%, which was what the world was at, to 16%. And extreme poverty was labeled as less than $1 a day for any human living in that. An increase in sanitation, medicine, and agricultural productivity, which has benefited human life, making the life expectancy go from our long history of 30 to now the age of 68. Undernourishment went from 26 to 13% in 40 years. And when you look at the countries that have tried other systems, mainly communism, it's essentially failed communism. But you look at U.S. society versus the Soviet Union. You look at West Germany versus East Germany. You look at South Korea versus North Korea. You look at Hong Kong and Singapore versus China. And essentially all of the ones who did the free enterprise capitalism ended up more politically, socially, and economically free. So don't get me wrong, I fully agree that there are people, because our society is run as money as the god, are straight up boned. Like, they become really a slave to not only those physically who are living in serious poverty, but also mentally. You become a slave to the god that is money. But I definitely don't think it's like one of the world's greatest evils, how a lot of people play it out to be. I think that it's caused a lot of good. It's just like anything else. It's caused a lot of good as well.
So you got that quote from that book?
From the book, which obviously is biased.
I would push back. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would push back on what you said there to say this. Fine points that were made. I don't know if there's really correlation between capitalism and all those things you said, but I'll even just let that go. The thing I want to push back on, though, is the idea that, like, West Germany versus East Germany, or USSR versus USA, and, like, who did best. You have to understand, there was a Cold War during that time where the U.S. did everything it could to destroy the communist countries. They blockaded them. They didn't allow them to trade with anybody. Cuba. Cuba became a pariah state. You know, North Korea. These places, they're not allowed to trade with other countries. So they didn't even have communism. Really, I mean, they didn't get to try communism because they had to fight America the whole time. You know what I mean? They had to fight the West the whole time. West Germany, just so you know, West Germany was like flooded with money, free money. They were given free money. Okay, East Germany was flooded with freaking everything they could to destroy them. You know, it was not that these were two systems that were going at the same time and they were experiments.
Yeah.
The West was always fucking the so-called communist countries over. You know what I mean? And that's why you have people who hate the states, because they know what the states has done in the past. You know what I mean? North Korea has a reason to hate the USA. You know, any of these places, China has a reason to do what it does. You know what I mean? To not even fuck with the states that much. Like they got to do their own thing, and because the states are, you can't trust the United States of America. And it's, yeah, I'm part of it. So I'm just saying, like, it's not fair to really bring up like how great we have it and how shitty the other places have, because we made those places shitty, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. South America does not have to be as poor as it is, but the United States of America decided cocaine is not allowed to be sold or grown, and so they fucking poisoned Colombia. Colombia's fucked, you know, because the U.S., because they want to be friends with the U.S. They should have fucking long time ago become like Cuba and be like, fuck you guys, we're not playing with you. But that's really what it is. We don't allow people to do what they want to do.
Yeah, so they weren't left to their own devices to see how the system would play out. What they had was like only the system in name, but then what happened was
USSR. I mean, you have connection to the USSR at all?
Yeah, my family.
Family. So like, you probably know that the idea that we get in America is not the same idea that actually happened, right? Some people were doing pretty well during communist times, but again, they had a system. They didn't like anybody who wasn't. I can't call it racism, but I know that Russia had this class system, and if you're down with the right people, you're going to be doing well. I know Russians who were very wealthy during USSR times, and there were others but we would always see the propaganda that you're waiting online with your babushka all day long for a piece of toilet paper. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of bullshit. You know.
I even talk to my mom nowadays. When we have dinner, I ask her about because I still have family in St. Petersburg out there, and I asked them how is it out there, you know, like in terms of like the corona, or like I think Putin wants he's banning all GMO foods, like he doesn't want that in the country, and like he's not forcing vaccine on any of the people there, but like people here would think that it's a complete communist country, he's a evil dictator, he's forcing all these things on them, but like my mom says, like it's fine, like people on the streets, they do what they want, like it's not really a stressful life. You know what I mean?
St. Petersburg
is
nice.
Yeah, it's hearing the opinions of you guys and the points you guys just stated. It brings me back to thinking about like just how little I know understand, because from every text that you read to every word that you hear to any news that you see, it's all coming from one perspective. Whether you like it or not, a human being wrote it, and human beings are flawed and they're biased. No matter what, you're going to be biased. And it's like I read this thing and I start thinking like this is oh look, like West Germany versus East, like how is it that like Singapore and Hong Kong versus China, like look, Soviet Union versus United States, look at what they do in the US, but like Buddha said, like almost all of our perceptions are wrong, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, damn, it's like, what do I even know? Right.
No, and that really does bring me back to this World Screaming Nove book, in the sense that a lot of it is, again, it's like angry joking, but it's like the thing that I kind of come to, I mean, you can say the Buddha said it or whoever said it, but like there is no truth. There is actually no truth. Like we all have our own truth in our heads. We walk around. We all have our own glasses that we see the world through. But you can't tell me, like, I mean, you can say that things happened. Yes, 9/11 happened. You know what I mean? I know that. I saw that. Some people younger people though tell me that it didn't happen. You know, man landed on the moon has become a thing that people are saying they don't even believe in. But what I'm saying is, like, there's no such thing as truth, really. We make up the truth. And you're talking now even more about confirmation bias. You know what I mean? Like, you want to think that you understand the world. Exactly. Not just you, but I'm saying we all want to believe that we know We know the deal. And I personally, I think I know the deal for myself, but I don't know the deal for you guys. I don't know the deal for other people's, you know what I mean? But I would say you can have ideas on communism, capitalism, all this stuff, and you can have ideas on war and all these things, but you can also be humble and think, realize that you don't know much. You know, there's a lot more out there to know, different perspectives to know. You know, I could never. Yeah, there's certain things that I will say, no, this definitely I don't agree with, but you know, at the same time, like confirmation bias, you know, it keeps us in our bubble, keeps 100%. Us in our circle, and we keep saying, oh, see, I know, see this, and it's like, and the truth is, if you do find evidence to support the things that you think, then you almost can create that world too. If you believe that the world is like this, then you'll start seeing that everywhere, and you'll create that reality for yourself almost. You know, so if you believe capitalism is so good, you'll see it as so good. If you believe capitalism is so bad, you'll see how horrible it is also. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
it's like the eye chooses the eye sees what it chooses to see, and in the World Screaming Nove, the character Moki G is sifting throughout life, trying to figure out, well, a job I must take, even though this is some crazy bullshit. Like, I don't want to be a part of the system. I have to get a job. What job can I get? And he meets up with some people, like some hippies, and they end up telling him, like, what you can do is you can be a teacher. You can teach the disenfranchised youth, and with that education, you can open their minds. And then the Moki G.
That's a true story, by the way.
the Moki G ends up countering that, and he's like, what am I going to do? Teach the oppressor? Teach the oppressed to be more like their oppressor. That's a bullshit job. And then you have the students repeating 5%er knowledge, things showing America for what it is, Marxisms, quotes like the oppressed are allowed once every few years to decide which particular representatives of the oppressing class are to represent and repress them.
Yeah, I think I stole that from Noam Chomsky or something.
And like the 5%er knowledge, again, to touch back on the RZA, he speaks on his introduction to the 5%ers, and it's like there's three classes or three divisions. It's like there's an 85%, which are very easy to fool and are easily led and don't know much. Then there's the 10%, which have an understanding of some things and use it to fool the 85%. And then there's the 5%, which is the part that he labels himself under. And
which again, that's a really attractive idea, especially for young people. And I was captured by the ideas of the 5%ers when I was younger. They have really sexy ideas about, and again, they think that they know what's going on, and that's a great. It feels good to feel like you know what's going on. But now that I'm older, I gotta say I push back on 5% of knowledge, and I would even say that it's too easy. You know, it's just too easy to explain the world in these numbers, and I like it, but at the same time, I wouldn't follow anybody who's telling me, "Oh, follow me. I got 5% of knowledge, and you should follow me." Like, all right, dude, you do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. Again, and again, so this whole world screaming Nove. I got the students in there. Moki G has his students in prison screaming Nove, saying that over and over and over. And that reminds me again of like 5% of stuff because there's things that you memorize, you know, and there's like lines that you memorize from certain texts and you say back and forth to people. And when you ever get G-checked or people like ask you things, it's almost like religion also. Like, you know, you say the what is it, Hail Mary type of stuff, and you know, all of these type of things you're supposed to say over and over and over. But again, it's too simple for me.
I think that one thing that's super powerful is education and is reading is understanding and listening and keeping an open mind, because confirmation bias is super real. It's very hard to get rid of in its entirety. But one thing that can, I guess, decrease it a little bit is reading not just one little topic or from one side, but just really seeing and hearing and reading things from different perspectives, so you can get, like right now, my ideas on things have just been expanded a little bit more because I'm hearing a different side. Right. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on thinking my little thing.
Right.
But, you know, I think that that's so powerful. And I think it's cool how in the book, Moki G comes across his idea to become a teacher through that idea. It was like a pure reason. You know what I'm saying? It was like a reason that had value, and it gave him a cause to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I never wanted to be a teacher, and then it came a time in my life where you got to choose a job. You know what I mean? And it's like, what the fuck am I gonna do? I'm gonna go work for Microsoft. You know, I'm gonna go do some type of corporate shit. I'm gonna, be a banker. Like no, I fucking hang myself. You know, and now I don't say teaching is the best job. I have love for the job, but it's got a lot of problems also. The system is bullshit. Principals all suck. You're not allowed to do anything innovative. They want you to fucking just basically do the same script that they've been doing for 100 years, and it sucks in that respect. But I also think young people are so exciting to be around and to see them opening up, see them blooming, and to be part of that. I don't think I would have got out of my teenage years had it not been for like a couple of older people who like showed me like, yeah, life will get better. You get through this tough time, and there are some cool people in this world, so you don't have to fucking, hang it up thinking everybody sucks. So teaching is that was a job I did for many years, and I'm still doing it now, and it's nice, but it's also you want to I guess just in my hippie head, I don't want to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? I want to do something good for the world, let's say. And what job is good for the world? I don't know.
No,
be a doctor.
It's like Angel mentioned in your book. You state how there is no job that doesn't support the evil empire. You know what I mean?
Right.
Other than teaching. Because teaching, like the youth especially, it's super important. I feel because they're such at a vulnerable stage in their development that they take whatever information you give them very seriously, because like in a way a teacher is an authority figure, so they like really listen and believe what you have to say. So I was personally wondering, like, you being a teacher and the way like your thoughts on life and your past and like being this like wild person in a way, and you saying that like you want to express your views on the kids, but like when I think of public schools and like what I've been through in them, it's like the teachers are in a way like very robotic. They're like you said, set on a certain curriculum, and like there's no other side to it. Like you know what I mean, like completely open-minded. Like it just doesn't, I don't correlate those two things.
I know,
so like
I know.
I was gonna ask you, like, how do you slip those things in, like how does that even work?
Here's another
It must
like
be really hard to do that.
ancient Buddhist quote. Actually, it's from Lao Tse, and he says, "When the student is ready, the teacher appears." I love that quote so much because it's hard to say like it's not really the teacher who's doing it; it's the student who's doing it. Like the student is ready, and then you have that like conversation, or you have that knowledge maybe that you and also as a teacher, you're not just a teacher, you're a learner also, and the students teach you. I learned so much as a teacher from my students, but every now and then there's like that moment, there's that, they call it teachable moment maybe, or there's like this moment where you could be like, yo, this or that, and then it starts, the light bulb goes off and things just start going in that right direction.
For me, in my experience with the school system, I was in school for so many years. I was, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but I was going to be a dentist. I went to...
I could use one.
What? Oh, yeah. I went to like whatever. I got like this or that degree, this or that title. And something that I've always thought of now that I'm out of the schooling system and seemingly not going to go back to it in the foreseeable future is like, God fucking damn it. I had wished that when I had started from literally the beginning until I finished, I had thought about it differently. Because all I cared about was like graffiti, skateboarding, hardcore fist fighting. You know what I mean? Like that's all I cared about. I was like, yo, school, that shit is for suckers. Like anybody who does well in school, they're a sucker. If you listen to the teacher, you're a sucker. If you show the teacher respect, you're a sucker. You know what I'm saying? Like if you do the homework, you're a fucking sucker. If you do it right, you're a sucker. If you even care, about what the teacher's saying and don't make an obvious show that you don't care, and if anything, disrespect it, then you're a sucker. And I think I lost didn't take advantage of such an amazing opportunity that I had in front of me. And I think about it now, and some of the works that I was that they assigned to read that I half-assed read, would half-ass read the Spark Notes, some of the papers and the questions that the teachers would give, which were meant to produce an insight in the student out of themselves, like force them into some insight. I think of it and I'm like, I wish there was a way that we could do something so that when you are in the school system, you appreciate it because you have so much to learn. And now I'm trying to go back and I'm trying to reread. I'm looking up the syllabuses of philosophy. I'm looking up the syllabuses of history, and I'm seeing like, what are these people reading? I got to reread all this shit because I straight up don't remember nothing.
Because you're ready. You're the student. You're finally ready. You know what I mean? When you were a teenager, you were going through other things. You had the hormonal things happening. You were, who knows what, girlfriends and friends and peer pressure and also society telling you. All our movies basically are like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, fuck school. I just want to fucking party all the time. And it's like, all right, I was the same way as a teenager. But then, it's about maturity, right? So that's I don't stress young people being idiots because that's just what you got to go through sometimes. You know what I mean? You know what? I wanted to write something on the wall though.
Do it up.
You were right. You were talking about the new Jim Crow.
Yes.
Something that I saw, I heard the other day. So we would learn about Jim Crow in school, and but not really learn about it. They would say that term. They would say that during that time, black people were not, allowed to do X, Y, Z. They were not equal with white people. But somebody said the other day on the radio, it really stuck with me. They're calling it Jim Crow / apartheid. And maybe I'm going to write that on the wall because when I was younger, we would talk about apartheid in South Africa. And that was like a big thing. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, hip hop would talk about it. Like, stop apartheid. That was like a big thing. People would wear buttons that would say stop, end apartheid in South Africa. Because they had that word comes from apart height. Keep people away from each other. We never called it apartheid in America. You know what I mean? And so to call Jim Crow apartheid to me is really a powerful thing to do. And they also call Israel an apartheid state now. I mean, some people because they have this apartheid thing. Now, it's very difficult to talk bad about Israel or the United States of America because you get in a lot of trouble if you say those things. But so again, that's what I'm really excited about. I'm happy we don't have to fight a crazy bloody revolution, but we can say these words, and somehow these words are more powerful than even a bloody revolution. Because after fighting, we'd go back to the same shit anyway. You know what I mean? So to call America apartheid, I think is really powerful. So I just want to write that on the wall, if you don't mind. Is it a T or a D? Maybe I should look it up. Apartheid. It's like a fucking. It's a D. Yeah. It's like a German word because in South Africa they speak some crazy ass Dutch language, which is very similar to German. But this word always, to see apartheid and Jim Crow together. Somehow, it's really powerful to be able to talk about the United States of America. I guess I'm not saying it on mic, but just to be able to talk about the USA as we speak about other countries, I think is really freeing. Also, really, because so much propaganda out here doesn't allow us to have an honest conversation about our country. Because kind of like the things that you were saying earlier about capitalism, it's like a lot of people will just shut down the conversation, say, hey, it's the greatest country ever. You wouldn't be able to do this if you were in China. You wouldn't be able to do this if you were, whatever. And it's always like, that's not the conversation. The conversation is not about better than, it's about what are we fucking actually doing here again, you know what I mean? And so I want to point out something. I'm white, and people be like, oh, why white people got to talk about like black people's shit? And that's true. Like I feel a little awkward that there's no black person here right now. We're talking about black people's world, and I think that's kind of it's an iffy thing to talk about. But what I want to say is, when I was younger, I was really deeply moved by racism. You know what I mean? I was I saw it very, very in black and white terms. I went to schools with mostly black kids, and I was treated like a god. You know what I mean? By teachers, and even black people be like, "Oh, you're good," but that black people are bad, and it was just so bizarre. And I became a real bad kid because of that. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get away with fucking murder," because you're always gonna be blaming the black kids. You know what I mean? And so I just want to say though, like I think about racism, I talk about racism, I write about racism. I'm very much. that's my thing. You know what I mean? Because that's what touched me when I was younger. And I see a younger people today, they're like some people are like really about the LGBTQ rights, you know, and like I'll talk to young people and they're like, it's all about LGBTQ. They're all in on that, you know what I mean? And that means a lot to them. And me personally, I don't have that same care really about shit. You know, I only care about racism, you know what I mean? So like everybody has their focal point, their focus. And so I just want to put that out there. Like, yeah, I'm a white guy who's like really talking about this shit because I feel like I also have a platform as a white guy. I'm supposed to say certain like white people shit and I'm not, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's a powerful thing to be able to do. But yeah, I just want to put that out there. And another thing, now that I'm on the whole white black thing, I feel like something that has not been brought up this year, but maybe people should start talking about is white on white intimidation. And so white people will intimidate other white people to not say things about racism, to not rock the boat, as they say. You know what I mean? White people intimidate white people. And like I won't put a Black Lives Matter sign on my house because I'm afraid like white neighbors will break my windows. You know what I'm trying to tell you? Like there's something just so you know, there's something in the air. It makes me think now like of the Wizard of Oz and like, yo, let's just keep this whole facade up that we have a wizard up here and, you know, it's not a guy behind the fucking curtain, and just shut up about it, you know? And so like, I know I don't have long to live, you know, I'm in my 40s now. I'm just saying like, you know, you get your time on earth is when you get your time on earth. But I decided a long time ago, I'm going to talk about the shit I'm going to talk about because why hide? You know, why not talk about these things? You know what I mean? At the beginning of this book, there's a quote by Eldridge Cleaver. He says, I just saw this now. I love this quote. No slave should die a natural death. And it also reminds me of like, you know, don't live your life on your knees. You know what I mean? You gotta be up. You gotta be strong. And so I talk a lot about racism, and I'm working more. I'm writing a book right now, going even deeper with it because it really it means a lot to me. So I don't know again what you guys really what makes you move, but this shit that's my motor. That's like a battery in my back. You dig?
Yeah, there's a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche actually where it's about what you talk about, like not being selfish, like in terms of like passing down information, like having a meaning in this life. You know what I mean? Like this life is short, so like you know, fucking do something with it. So it goes, the modern individual focuses too narrowly on his own short lifespan and wants to pluck the fruit himself from the tree he plants, and so no longer likes to plant those trees that demand a century of constant tending and are intended to provide shade for long successions of generations. So like people are so set on you know, like living their own life, hiding in their own corner, and like only enjoying the pleasures of life for themselves. But I think like passing on to generations like the knowledge, like what you're doing right now, is like super important. I don't know if it relates to everything we're just talking about, but I thought it does.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, I think it definitely does.
When I read your books, all of them to me give off a sense of like serious emotion, serious passion, serious meaning and purpose. When I read them, I myself kind of get filled with like, I don't know how to explain it, but just this feeling of just like this feeling of like a movement. You know what I mean? I know that, like you said, a lot of the books were written in when you were like young and full of cum, bombing, like down with super revolutionary ideas and all that stuff. But you know, they're like a treasure to me to be able to read stuff like this from people like you, because you're not your average author. So it's something almost like more special when you pick it up. You are more, it's like you're more attentive to it. You're more willing to open your mind to what is actually in the book, as opposed to reading it from the lens that you read it from. But in terms of what you just said, and the quote from Nietzsche is like something that I have like so much value in, is this being able to record these conversations and that anyone can read them. Because me growing up using things like State Your Name as a Bible, using things like just like the interviews that would come out from 12 ounce to state your name to like autograph to videograph to fuck graph to seeing it on the streets to anything I saw online on Flickr. They were like a Bible to me. They were like they would influence me, and I would live my life accordingly. And you know, I love this because the platform is super open and you can go deep on topics and see who the person is and hear their ideas in depth. And I have so much appreciation for you coming on the show and just everybody who's been on the show because, like, young people are listening to this and they're going to be influenced by this. They're going to have their minds open to certain ideas that otherwise wouldn't be there. And it's like they're sitting in the room right now. You know what I mean? Hearing about these ideas, hearing about your books, hearing about ideas pro and con to capitalism and shit that otherwise, a lot of graffiti heads listen to our show and a lot of young graffiti heads from just different countries and different states. They're not going to be because they're in their bubble, so they're not going to hear this. But when they hear it from someone like you, it's going to be more, they're going to receive it better than if they were to hear it from their regular teacher sitting at the front of the thing, telling them like, read this when you go home and write 10 paragraphs on it, minimum 500 words. I mean, like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? They're not going to be like, I don't want to read this. This is some bullshit. When they hear it in this form, hopefully their minds will be open a little bit more to it.
And I love it. I love what you guys are doing. It starts a conversation, but then I want to see what they say back. And I'm not saying like see the comments on YouTube, but I would love to see another like piece of work, maybe a record or whatever it is that other people do. If they want to write a book too, or whatever it is, I want to see the conversation continue and continue and continue because you make me feel, just because I'm a little older, you make me feel like I'm some type of smart guy. I don't feel smart at all, and it's nice to feel, loved or wanted in this world. But yeah, I have only respect for the young people and old. I have respect for everybody if they're doing something, making moves, and staying positive. I think you guys are pretty positive people. That's good. So much negativity out there that we gotta, deal with.
Absolutely. Anything closing remarks or things you want to, shout out? Any ideas you still
today
have?
Today we were really talking about this book, The World Screaming Nov, and I think it's a really funny read. It's also a little crazy. What I like is I have a lot of names in here of characters, and they all have like graffiti names. I wanted everybody to have a cool graffiti name in here, and yeah. I guess closing remarks would be this. I think Rikers Island is shame. It's a stain. It's a nasty place. It's really a disgusting place. It needs to be shut down. I really hope that the next mayor continues the work of shutting it down because it's going to take work to build other prisons and whatnot. I ask people to maybe look into the idea of like Angela Davis's book, Are Prisons Obsolete? Not to necessarily say, all right, be either on this side or on that side, but to hold sides, two sides in the same, different things in your head, and to be more nuanced with ideas and to be more thoughtful rather than just like, well, I'm this or I'm that, I'm red, I'm blue, I'm, Republican and Democrat reminds me of Blood and Crips also, you know what I mean? It's like so ridiculous how, but yeah, like definitely free all the homies. That was the thing that they would say a lot in prison was free all the homies. I really believe that there's more good people, more like people are good. I don't believe people are evil, and we need to stop this constant locking up people. And especially in New York, they lock up black people. And they say black and brown nowadays. And it's true, there's definitely, if you want to call brown people, but I'm just saying like black people are really put in prison. And they need to figure the system is just rigged against black people, and I want to just like really say that again. The system is rigged against black people. Yeah.
Yo, thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. NOV. Peace.